you have to believe and love in what your side hustle or what you're promoting is. Because when you kind of go off on your own path, you're your own marketing team, you're your own cheerleader, your own belief system. You surround yourself with friends and family and others who believe in you, but you're it. So I've seen so many people try to cash in quick on something and they don't really believe in it, or they think it's cool, it could hit. But until you believe in it, you're not pushing what is representing you.
Welcome, everybody, back to an exciting season finale of the Undisrupted Podcast. That's right. This is... There we go. Got to throw my sound effect horn in there. I finally get to use it. It's the end, Adam. 5 seasons, 2 years, 60 episodes, 4 live keynotes. What have we learned? What have you learned?
Wow. Let's see. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. Wow. 5 seasons. Amazing. And you know what? I've learned a lot from every guest. I think that's one thing I love about this podcast we've been able to do, during a time where everybody started creating a lot of content, and some of that content's not here anymore. Our content is still out there going strong, but I have to definitely say it's to our guests, which I'd like to even say that our friends, anyone who has spent any time on our podcast, they've been able to share some information that's helped me grow as a professional. So I'm just happy and looking back at all those things, the guests that we've been able to bring on.
Yeah, if I were to extrapolate on that, I would agree with you. The guests are the ones, and I'm trying to think of like what are some of our greatest hits of guests. I mean, one for me, I think, was meeting Greg Bagby at that the Squid Game conference we called it in Las Vegas, and doing a live podcast with him. I think he was our first ever live guest, because you and I were, it was pandemic, so everything was all remote, and that was our first time going live on a podcast with somebody. Ken Shelton just recently, of course, comes to mind. That was a banger. It was longer. It's the longest episode we've ever recorded, and we could have gone at least 3 times as long after that as well. So,
I forgot one. You forgot one. Got to go with the hot wing episode. To this day, people stop me at conferences and they ask me how are your teeth now, Adam? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you got to go back and watch that episode.
That was painful, and actually put Adam in the hospital. True story. So you'll have to go back and watch. Now, it may have been the wings. It may have been something else. COVID that was going around that may have put him in the hospital. But one of the very, 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 very first guests that we've ever had on the show was Dr. Matthew X. Joseph. He is the publisher. He's done a lot of things in the last couple of years. We're going to catch up with him here in a second. He's a consultant. He's a speaker. If you haven't heard of X Factor EDU, you will by the end of this podcast, because it's near and dear to my heart for a few obvious reasons, including the book that's right over my shoulder. But Matt, welcome back, man. How you been?
It's awesome to be here. You always remember your first. That's what they say.
That's what they say.
Back for more.
Right.
And the hot wings, I was listening to you guys in the hot wing one. I tuned in live and I couldn't get enough of it, because through our friendship and events, we've had to endure eating jalapenos on stage and do some of these other crazy things. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting my popcorn and watching this puppy, because this is good. So that is a podcast, videocast gold, let me tell you. Anytime you can, put yourself into sweats and pain for all of our amusement, I'm in.
We had you back on in 2020. We had a lot going on, in the throes of the pandemic and all of that. And we've all kind of changed a little bit. I think you've probably done the most changing out of all of us on this call right now. But tell us really quick, what's been going on in the world of Matthew X. Joseph?
Well, first, it's been crazy. As you said, I had a job, then I didn't have a job, and then I needed a job. And then I connected with a friend of mine, Brian Aspin, up in Canada, because he helped me publish my second book, Power of Connections. And he said, how about you open a publishing arm of your consulting? And I was like, yeah, sure, cool. What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. So before that, I was bringing in some authors into Codebreaker, and he's like, just do what you're doing for me and start to find talent out there, start to find individuals you want to get their voices out. And the book I wrote was Power of Connections, because I know a lot of folks like the two of you and at different events. And for me, it was a whole different side of leadership, because up until this point is, now a little over a year ago, I was a teacher, I was an elementary school teacher, and then elementary school principal, and then a district leader. I've essentially been in Massachusetts public education since I graduated in 1993. And I was like, okay, now what? And I didn't know how that was going to go. And it really took on a whole different side of leadership, a whole different side of impact, a whole different side of fun and creativity that I didn't think would happen. But also in that time, a real good friend of mine, half of this podcast, both are good friends, but one of them said, you make sure you diversify. He said that real soon. If you're going to do something outside of a public school, make sure you diversify. Well, I wasn't going to open a bar like he did. I have no sense of DJ skills. I don't even know what that means. So I started to support districts in areas that I've had experience in, like coaching principals or in curriculum or helping districts purchase curriculum as part of an RFP process. So finding ways to stay involved in a district, because a lot of what I try to speak about and write about is practical stuff, and to stay part of a district in that role, but also get out and speak and share and write.
That's what I'm telling Adam. He needs to diversify his income sources, which is why we developed a OnlyFans account for his knuckles. I mean, that's why there they are. It's been every episode this
That's a
season, folks.
The
must
only
view right there.
hands.
Those are the most
Ken Chuck
valuable hands in the
gave us some
podcast
great
industry.
tips.
Yeah.
We're going to be exfoliating and all that stuff. We got all
There
the
you
great
go.
tips now.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
like
And there'll
it.
be a live Manny Petty episode that makes me nervous at some point in
Oh,
our
that's
future. Ugh. Well, let's talk about a little bit about where you've been and where you've gone, and also just kind of the field in general, because a lot of folks, obviously in education, the last couple of years have left, and I think we could say either more or less. There's a lot of articles now saying that the teacher shortage thing is overblown. Certain areas it's pretty real, and there's people that leave for all sorts of reasons. They go into consulting, or maybe they get snatched up by an ed tech company, or maybe they leave education altogether. What do you think are the primary reasons? What motivates someone to leave the field? Because you and I have both left. Adams is holding strong, but you and I have both left in the last 3 years. I left in 19, you left in kind of 20, but then you've kind of come back with some of the part-time consulting too, like me.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I say a lot is don't outthink the room. Like we need this philosophy. Let's study this. Let's figure this out. People are just annoyed at the restraints that are being put on them. No one went into teaching to say, I'm going to create the best worksheet ever and give so many assessments that kids just hate me. Nobody signed up for that. But that's what it's turning into. So it's frustrating as hell. I remember, I was a principal for 10 years, and one of the last years I was there, I actually brought kids to ISTE. It was a time where we were both in Philadelphia and we didn't know each other until we saw a video of like, hey, all of our friends were at this party, and half of us didn't know each other at that time. And kids were doing podcasts and just really doing innovative things. And then the next year, the superintendent said, okay, next year, you're not going to do podcasts. You're going to use those computers to do assessments every period. And I was like, what? I don't get that. And then as a district leader, in my last role, we launched this one-to-one initiative, and I had lucky enough to have partnerships with like Flipgrid or Grid Flip now, or Bunsey, or different groups, and we were able to pilot programs, and they just were grieved because they didn't have to do it. And I think my honest answer is innovative educators like the three of us and so many people out there get so frustrated at not being able to have that creativity. And I know one of the authors in X Factor, Jed, he used to bring his guitar, because we used to work in the same district, bring his guitar into classroom. He was a third grade teacher. You were an elementary teacher. It was awesome. 6-foot guy strumming away. Kids loved it. And by the end of his tenure, they're like, shh, shh, quiet down. And it's like you just lose that excitement of why you went into it. And I think if that's the reason, I think people are moving away from it, because there's the lack of freedom and individuality.
That plays a big part in it. And I think, that we've talked in this season a lot about culture and what power and impact that has on anything. I think you just kind of touched on that, and what's really happening with the kind of dampening or softening or even the noise that's outside of education is causing those of us inside of it to kind of feel that internal collapse. And I think that's why people just evacuate and leave the field altogether. I mean, I think we're all kind of lucky because we still, I mean, you and I, Matt, are still in it. I mean, obviously not to the level of which Adam is fully embedded. So we still feel that impact. And I think that's what keeps us motivated and driving toward what we do with the podcast and with the books and with the speaking and with consulting. I mean, money is always a part of everything, but time is important too. And I think time is more important than money, because you can make more money, but you can't make more time. So for us and the time we have on this earth, I mean, I'm like, what can we do to actually make impact and
Well,
change?
and it's the creative freedom. Like, you wanna be creative, and I think they're saying people are leaving the profession. They're not leaving the field. Like, you impact educators all the time, which in turn impacts students by your speaking and presenting, and same with you, Adam, both directly and indirectly. So people aren't leaving education as much as they're leaving the brick and mortar education that we know of.
Yeah, I kind of look at it from a perspective of we have to stop shaming people from leaving what they're currently doing to do something else. If, to your point, if they're still in the field of education, but they're still fulfilled and still happy, we should be congratulating those people versus making them feel bad because they chose to go a different path. So, that's one of the things we have to do a better job of, just really supporting people, no matter what direction they choose with this. So along those lines, Matt, there's always people looking at taking their side hustle to the next level. Whatever that may be, whether it's their Etsy shop or their Teachers Pay Teacher store or their OnlyHands account. Uh,
Only hands?
uh,
Did you say
only
only hands?
hands,
I think you
only
just made up
hands.
a new. We don't even need OnlyFans.
Nice.
It's going to be called Only Hands, and it's a whole website dedicated to people's hands only and parts of their hand. I love this. It says
You don't
Only
want
Hands
mine,
account.
since I had a snowblower accident, so mine would be in the discount rack.
Oh,
So
there you go. Yeah.
the 99-cent shop.
So, like, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about taking their side opportunities or their side hustle, if you will, to the next level? What would be some advice you'd give them?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take this in two directions, because the second half of this is talking about that this isn't bragging. But the first, not about me, but about what I'm going to share. You have to believe and love in what your side hustle or what you're promoting is. Because when you kind of go off on your own path, you're your own marketing team, you're your own cheerleader, your own belief system. You surround yourself with friends and family and others who believe in you, but you're it. So I've seen so many people try to cash in quick on something, and they don't really believe in it, or they think it's cool, it could hit, but until you believe in it, you're not pushing what is representing you. So for me, it was making sure that I whittled away all the things that I thought I needed to say as a principal, or think I needed to say as a district leader, and say, this is who I am and this is what I believe in. And sure, my Q rating went down for a little bit, and then built back up with a different group of individuals who were like, okay, I can relate to that. And when I started the X Factor EDU, I wanted to find people who were okay being who they were and love who they were, because that's what we would represent. In the book, Power of Connections, it starts with be unapologetically you, and that is carried through. Like, I've been through too many times where I've doubted myself because of what others, especially superintendents, think. So my recommendation is love whatever it is you put out. Don't do initiative du jour. One week I'm doing bracelets, one week I'm doing this, one week I'm doing this, until something hits. Take time and find what it is that you're going to be able to stand by yourself in a room of two people and say, this is awesome because of whatever it is. And the two people become four, become 10, become an arena full of people because you believe in it. And that's the first thing. The second half of that, it's hard in that field when that's you or your own promoter, where you have to balance that. Oh, you think you're so great because you wrote a book. No, I actually just believe in it, and am proud to share it. So it's getting that inner confidence of knowing the difference and finding that line between bragging and celebrating the work that you do, because we're terrible at that in education. We never are proud of the things we do. We're always passing it off, like, oh, that was a good lesson, oh, that was a great interview because of the guest, or whatever it is. We have strengths too, and just recognize that when you go off on whatever the side hustle is.
Yeah, I think those that same kind of power, that's what's captivated me. If you guys hear Matt talking, this is one of the reasons why I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show, because there's some if I get really honest with you, there's some vulgar content that's about to come up, so I won't share every word I said. But at one point when I was shopping around and thinking about Ready Set Fail and where it would go, and there's a few publishers we got into, and Matt, even though he and I have known each other for a long time, to his credit, never pressured me to do like, hey, come. He just said, hey, listen, if things don't work out, know that I'm available. I've just launched this wing. And I went through a series of different challenges with some publishers. I won't name who they were, but at one point I sent him a text, and basically the text is bleep it is what I said. I'll just say that, bleep it, let's do it, why not, and that was kind of like my, and he's like, sounds good, and that was like our official contract. So
That
uh
was it. Let's go.
that was it, which basically aligns to what your mantra is, which is being unapologetically you. And it was what the book I felt like aligned with too, with Ready Set Fail. And then and you've built quite a brand since then. um Tell me a little bit about who else is in that, who, because I've known you had signed some people before me, and then they're still, their books, some of them have come out and some of them haven't. But what's the landscape of X Factor do you look like right now? How many people you got? Where are we going?
Yeah. So, well, just to back up to what you said, and that's true. Like, especially, being friends, I didn't want any pressure. I didn't want anything. But the biggest thing that I want to provide to, or provided, I think, to you and the other authors is your voice will not get lost. And I think a lot of individuals who've come on board are because they've had an experience where their voice has been either dampened or changed. In my first book, that happened to me, and that's kind of why I started on this path where I have a style that I like. I'm not saying it's perfect or great or even the best. I talk a lot, so a lot of my books are essentially just a 30,000 word podcast where I just talk and share strategies, and that's and it yeah, and it totally was different. I'm super proud of that first book, but at the same point, it doesn't sound like me. So that was one thing that I said going into starting this up, is that is the one thing I'll always promise the authors, that their voice will be the voice of the book, and their cover, what they want on it. I didn't like my first cover. It looked like a murder mystery. I even asked to change it and was told no. So it's like you learn along the way. Now I'm 51. Like after 50, like I don't care. Like I'm doing this how I need to do it. So that's the pitch. Like that's it. Like that's where we're at. And I had a chance, obviously, through some of the connections you have. I met a few individuals in a bar down in Texas called Idle Hands, and Gabriel
Promo.
Carrillo.
Plug.
Promo.
It all ties together to
Gabriel.
hands again. Yes, only
Yeah,
Yeah, there it
hands,
is.
idle
I see an
hands.
overarching theme.
There is a
Overarching
theme here.
theme.
I never picked
Yeah,
up on that.
so Gabriel Carrillo came on board, one of the first signees, and Melissa Adams and Jennifer Crook, a couple Texans, started this up because it was just a fun time at the bar. I don't know, 4 Tito's in, and we just started talking, and they loved the excitement. And I mean, Melissa and Jennifer, like, we're going to do a book about destination professional development. And I'm like, done. And Gabriel's like, I love to cook. I'm like, that's a book. And we just had fun with it. And just started to laugh and write. And then, my book came out first, Stronger Together, which is really what this whole, uh, you know, adventure is about, bringing authors together who get their voices out. And then your book came out, Ready, Set, Fail. And it was awesome to have it out there because it is exactly what I said. Besides being fun and great to read, it is, you could have failed. You were the first non CEO person's book to come out. Like you could have just flopped, right? It could have been like the pages were backwards. Like who didn't, you had nothing to go on except that we could fix it, right?
I knew where
So
you lived,
you
so
were,
I figured if worse come to
yeah, you
worse, the
did.
Sicilian in me
So
would come at
you
you.
were living your message of the book, which I would found extremely, empowering. And then, if similar to what I said about side hustle, you do anything out there, you are all in on that message. That is amazing. And then from there, people started to reach out to me. Yuritsa, she wanted to publish children's books, and I was like, I don't even know how to do that. I don't even know what that means. And she's at the time had her first child, Mackenzie, and she said, I want to write books about what Mackenzie would experience as a young Black girl growing up. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And we found an amazing illustrator, Jen Lebon from the Chicago area, and we just launched her third book in the Mackenzie Adventures series, which is great. And then another book we had out. So we were kind of just kicking around when Toby Price was in the news, and you're like, why don't you reach out to him? And again, I was like, okay. DM'd him the next day. He signed, in his first book, the Adventures of Titus the Monkey. It was really stories about autism, and he has 3 autistic kids, and his second book is going to be coming out as well. So through all that, people have started to see that kind of freedom and excitement and momentum. You made another connection for me, Dr. Alita Zachary Ross, and that was wonderful. And another book that we have out is Jed Stefanowicz. Like I said, we used to work together, and I would always say he's a digital learning coach. Jed, you do some amazing things. You have to share that with people. That's not normal. Like, people aren't doing those digital lessons. And he put his book out, Take Aim at Digital Learning, Activate, Innovate, and Motivate. So we've been, cruising along, and a few more in the pipeline as well. And what's happening now is people are reaching out, which is a nice feeling, where they are like, "Hey, I have this idea. What do you think?" And at first I was like, oh my gosh, let me just take a couple people. And then I was like, okay, we're starting to get a brand. We're starting to get a feel of our voice. We're starting to get a following. I'm, I have to grow up a little bit and be that person who has to say yes or no and give some critical feedback, because this is a business. I represent other people's voices, and I take that very seriously.
Well, it looks like you've learned a lot so far in your year plus of doing this and in this space. So let me ask you this question. And unfortunately, as educators, as I often say, we often give the game away for free. Whether it's talking to a vendor or somebody, we give the game away for free. So I'm gonna ask you to give some game away for free right now for those listeners out there. What would be some insights or something that you would give, words of wisdom, someone who's thinking about writing? Because everybody, they always say, oh man, you should write a book, or the things that you've gone through or you've experienced, somebody would love to read about it. So what advice would you give to someone out there who's thinking about create writing a book?
Sure. First thing is, get past the line that you're going to tell yourself of, who wants to hear what I have to say. Too many people get stopped at that, like, who wants to hear what I have to say? I'm just a second grade teacher in wherever. So if you have a story and a voice, start to tease it out. The second thing is, if you're starting to write, who's your audience? Because I see too many random videos, and I know I do some too, but I really try to be purposeful. So I'm not criticizing those who do that. I'm saying, if one day I see this person talking about SEL, the next day he's talking about ed tech, and the next day he's talking about leadership. I'm like, dude, what do you stand for? And who's your audience? So you can't have it all. You can't be teacher, special education, nurse, principal. So you can't. It just doesn't work that way. So find what your audience is, and then find what problem you're trying to solve. For me, I talk a lot about culture. That's what I studied at BC. That's what I feel I can talk about and back it up, and have experience with. And then the next thing is just write. I'm a flood the market guy. What I mean by that is, the first time I ever was published was in Tech and Learning Leader, and I sent them 6 things, and 5 were no's, like hard no's. Like, dude, have you written before? And then one of the 6 was in there, and I'm like, holy Christ! I have a magazine with my name in it with something I wrote. I didn't care about the 5. So too many people try to get one thing perfect. That, not to give the shameless plug to Ready Set Fail, but the we need to celebrate the attempts and really work through things. And for me, one strategy that I don't mind giving away, because it works for me, I record it on my phone, because I like to talk. I do presentations. So if I walk my dog, who's chilling right here with me like he always is, I put it on the Notes app, and I just talk. What do I think would be a great article? And the Notes app writes it down. I email it to myself. My number one favorite tool, Grammarly, chuck it in there, and I see what I have. And those are things to get started. But whatever you do, just start. Like, I am not a good writer. I've published 3 books. I would say I'm a creator. Thankfully, I have editors. I have Grammarly. I have people to read things. Like, so just start.
Yeah, I will back up that I am also not a great writer. I know I've written 7 books, and people always say, "Oh, what are you talking about?" I was like, "No, I have great editors, and Matt has a great editor on his team that's made my message make a lot of sense." We even pulled in a surprise double editor with my dad, who came in and who I just got done visiting like 10 minutes ago before this podcast. But an old Eagle Eye hooker, as Matt sent him a lovely bottle of his favorite syrup. Yes, because he doesn't drink, so. um, Always good to have that supporting. You've talked about support with your family, with your friends, getting that voice out there. Just start writing. These are things I've told my co-host for several years now. But let me ask you this though, Matt, because is there anybody else coming? You told some people that are in the lineup. Is there anyone else that our listeners out there might be interested in? Is there anyone else that could be a part of X Factor EDU that maybe someone in this audience might get excited about?
Well, sure. Well, as I said, I like to reflect on the field. I like to see what's out there. And I said, you know what we're missing on our team? Someone with sexy hands. So I
Oh,
reached I reached out to Adam and I said, listen, and very similar to what I said to you. You're my great friend. I want nothing but the best for you. I'm going to give you feedback on the next step in your writing because you got to get your message out there. I've seen it live. It's awesome. Here are some things to look for and go talk to people. And I think you did and talk to people. And I just stood back and was like, this is what we can do. And I asked Adam to join the team.
Yeah, I think he asked Adam three times. See what I did there? See what I did there?
ask Adam three.
Yes, really excited to partner and with this opportunity, get something out there. It's been one of those things that you guys have been telling me for a while. I need to go ahead and put some of these thoughts down on paper and get it out there to an audience. And long overdue, long overdue. A couple of ideas that we've been working on. Don't want to give away this part of the game for free.
No,
Um,
now that we're in the publishing side and profit,
Yeah.
let's not give too much
It's all
away.
intellectual property. Yeah.
but you don't have to take my word for it. I'm really excited to get this book out. And one of the things that it really sparked my interest in this was the ability to tell a story from my own voice. As I was going through my process, I heard a lot of people saying that as they were getting ready to put stuff forward, it felt like it wasn't theirs anymore. Once it got on paper and they started looking at revisions, it didn't have their voice anymore. And so that's one of the things that you promised in this way that is definitely going to sound like me, to the cover and from page one to the last page. So really excited to get that out there. So stay tuned. Hopefully, early 23, it will be on Amazon and all places where you will purchase books.
Heard it here first. Super exciting signing Adam File, and I'm really thrilled and honored and genuine that it will be your voice. And if it's not, I'm going to send it back because I've heard you on stage, and it's like that's unique. Like that's what we need. We need unique voices, and that is a promise that. And if it does, Carl can attest to it. Right before I hit send to get it printed, we went through every page on Zoom. And because I want to stand behind it, like, does this work? Yeah, let's switch this right to the last minute. And even after it was out, we made some changes. And that is the advantage of having this partnership if we can change it. And you even designed your own cover. And it was like, hey, what do you want it to look like? We do it in pages. You're a master at it. Have at it. And we work together and tweak some things like this isn't working and we need the QR code. So Adam, I'm psyched. I'm thrilled. And I think everyone is in for a treat because if you've seen him live, this book is going to have flavor. It's going to have some music references in there.
Gotta be
And if
dancing.
not, you can hear it. Dancing. Definitely some style if you haven't seen his style.
It may be one or two knuckle references in there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I was going to say, I have but one request, and only the people that listen to this podcast will know this. But if he puts the word knuckles in the book and you're reading it, you'll chuckle to yourself like, the inside joke because
I get it.
Yeah,
it's the Easter egg.
I see the author photo with you with your hand kind of over your chin a little bit.
I think someone's taken that already.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, again, folks, you heard it here first. Yes, Dr. Adam Fowle, my partner in rhyme, is off to write his first book with X Factor Youth. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. Adam, you've only got 6 more to go to catch up to me, so it's good that you're getting started now.
There it is.
Okay.
Shots fired. No.
Challenge.
Yes. But I for one is super excited to read it. I hope to be one of the first ones to get my hands on it and take a look at it as well. Guys, this has been an amazing run Adam and I have had. We're still doing this. We're not ending it anytime soon. It just feels like at the end of every season, Adam and I are always like, how are we not fired yet? How are we still able to put this podcast out there with all the really on the edge references, but you, the audience, have really kept us in there. And thank you for your feedback all throughout the years and running up to us at conferences and telling us some funny stories that we've told in the past. So y'all keep us going, man. That's a big part of it. So yep, stay tuned for season 6. It's coming out. We'll start doing recordings of that pretty soon. This is the beginning of school year, so probably wait until late fall. We'll start coming up with some more stuff. And we have a couple different ideas that we didn't get to try this season that we hope to debut, including Undisrupted the musical, which I think is going to be just amazing because we're going to come up with our first. We got to come up with our first album. We need to get an album out there.
The good thing is, maybe we'll see some folks because now some of the Future Ready events are back in person now. So, we'll definitely probably get a chance to see some people at some in-person Future Ready events.
I would love to do some of these live. The live ones are off the chart and fun. And I think I don't think it's been announced yet, so never mind. I was about to give something away, but we're not going to announce a future event that you and I will both be doing the live version of the podcast at. That's a very big event, but we'll hold that back and for next season. Thank you all for joining us, and listeners out there. Be sure to subscribe and give us a review. We'd appreciate it. We might even give you a shout out at a future show. This has been the Undisrupted Podcast, brought to you by Future Ready Schools. He's Adam, and you can follow him at AskAdam3 and a future author.
And he's Carl, and you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are better together.
And we are better
undisrupted.